I always thought I'd know, you know? I figured if something was going on, something serious, I'd feel it like a punch to the gut, some kind of sixth sense kicking in. But that's not how it went. Instead, it was quiet, surgical, even. That night, I showed up early to Emily's office party, her annual agency gala. Black tie, catered, the whole deal. I'd left work early, skipped the gym, even double-checked the tie she said matched her dress. Figured I'd be the supportive husband, arrive ahead of time, grab us drinks, maybe sneak a kiss before things got too formal. What I didn't expect was to walk into a scene that felt already lived in, familiar, like I had just interrupted something I wasn't supposed to see. The moment I walked in, I noticed our table was already full. That in itself was weird. Emily had told me we were assigned to table 5, and that she'd made sure we were seated together near the front. Because Thomas talks too much and I don't want to get stuck between him and management. Her words, not mine. But when I got to table 5, my name wasn't there. Instead, tucked neatly into the little silver card holder, was a tag that read Thomas R. in clean calligraphy. And there he was, already seated, wearing a wine-colored jacket and a look like he belonged. The seat beside him? That was where Emily sat, and her hand was on his. Not just hovering, not a polite brush or gesture caught mid-motion, but resting there. Natural. Familiar. Meanwhile, Thomas had one arm draped behind her chair, the same hand adjusting the strap of her dress like it was slipping. Like it wasn't the first time he'd done it. I just stood there, stunned. I think part of me froze not because of what I was seeing, but because of how ordinary it all looked. Like I was the one out of place. On the table in front of them, 2 VIP drink glasses sat nearly empty. Tall, frosted, with golden rims. These weren't the standard drinks everyone else was holding. These were the premium cocktails they reserved for the agency's upper-tier clients. I hadn't even been offered one yet. And draped over the back of Emily's chair was a man's blazer. Slim fit, dark gray wool. Not mine. Emily's head snapped up the second she saw me. Daniel! Hey! Her voice was too bright, almost loud, like she was trying to project normalcy, as if overcompensating could drown out the awkwardness. You're early. Wow. Great. Thomas glanced over at me and smiled. Calm, practiced, professional smile. His hand didn't move from her chair. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, waiting for someone to explain. But Emily had already launched into motion. There's been a seating mix-up, she said quickly, rising from her seat and plucking up the name cards with the grace of a magician doing a trick they've done 1,000 times. You know how these things go, logistics nightmare. Last-minute reshuffling because of client preferences and… Ugh, PR dropped the ball again. I watched her fingers fumble with the cards, mine, his, even someone else's, and rearrange them like that alone would reset the whole night. Like it would erase the image of her touching his hand. Or the jacket. Or the drinks. This isn't even our real table, she added, trying to laugh. We're probably supposed to be at 6. Or maybe 4. I'll check with Hannah. But she didn't check. She picked up the bouquet I had brought. White tulips, her favorite, and casually, almost absently, carried them behind a screen near the back of the room where the catering team was organizing desserts. I watched her set them down on a tray near a stack of takeout containers, like they were just another delivery to get out of the way. Then, she turned around and started waving over an event assistant, talking about lighting placements and gift bags. Logistics, planning, work, like the whole thing was a simple workplace snafu. I finally spoke. So, where am I supposed to sit? Emily didn't answer right away. She glanced at Thomas, then back at me, then pretended like she hadn't heard. You know what? She said, waving again at a different assistant. Let me check with the coordinator. They changed the flow. Might be standing cocktail hour for now. Right? Behind her, Thomas took a sip of his drink and leaned back like he was settling in for a performance. He didn't say a word to me, didn't offer to move, didn't apologize. He didn't need to, and that's when it hit me, not all at once, but in slow motion like falling underwater. She wasn't surprised to see me. She was surprised I showed up early. That half-second flicker in her eyes wasn't guilt. It was calculation. Recalibration. I disrupted the plan. I'd arrived before the stagehands finished switching out the props. I finally took a step closer, trying to keep my voice level. "Emily, is everything okay?" She smiled, tight, professional. "Of course. Why wouldn't it be?" I gestured toward the table. "Well, I just thought we'd be sitting together." "We will. We are. I mean, we're here now, right?" Her words stumbled out like a patchwork of reassurances, stitched together with corporate buzzwords. "Don't worry, babe. It's just chaos behind the scenes tonight." And yet, everything around her was calm. The table settings were precise. The lighting was immaculate. Even the jazz trio hadn't missed a beat. The only chaos was me. That realization sat heavy in my chest. The rest of the night unfolded in a haze. Emily flitting from conversation to conversation, looping me in when convenient, pivoting to logistics whenever things got close to personal. Her hand never returned to mine. Thomas never left the table. People kept asking how long I'd known Thomas. I smiled and nodded. Apparently, they'd worked closely together for months. Clients, training sessions, some kind of conference alignment initiative. He was always so helpful, so on top of things. At some point, I stepped outside for air. The chill was welcome, clean. I looked back through the window into the event space, watching as Emily leaned in close to Thomas, pointing something out on a clipboard. He laughed at whatever she said. Her fingers rested lightly on his wrist. It didn't look like betrayal. Not exactly. It looked like routine, like habit. And I think that's what scared me most. They say hindsight is 20/20. I used to think that was just something people said to make themselves feel better about being blindsided. But now, I think it's worse. Hindsight doesn't comfort you, it haunts you. It turns ordinary memories into evidence. It turns trust into a puzzle you realize was missing pieces all along. After that night at the gala, I couldn't let it go. I tried, God, I tried, but something about what I saw, and more importantly, what I felt, kept gnawing at me. It wasn't just the way Thomas touched her. It was the way Emily let him. I didn't confront her. Not directly. I told myself I was overthinking, being dramatic, letting my imagination run wild. But once the seed was planted, it grew fast. It wasn't a single thing, it was everything all at once, flooding back in sharp little flashes that wouldn't stop. First, her phone. It had been on Do Not Disturb mode for months. At first, I thought it was a work thing. She said it helped her focus. But then I noticed the previews were hidden. Notifications would flash, but I couldn't see who they were from unless the phone was unlocked. She used to let it sit face up on the counter. But now, always face down. And when she walked away, she took it with her, even just to get a glass of water. Then there was the second makeup bag I found in the trunk of her car. Not in her usual bag, but in a zippered side compartment she almost never used. Lipsticks I'd never seen, perfume samples, travel-sized moisturizers and wipes. When I asked about it, she laughed and said her agency was testing product lines and she got samples all the time. Thing is, Emily doesn't even work in product marketing. She works in accounts. And the perfume, God, the perfume. It wasn't subtle. It was this rich, floral scent, the kind you'd expect to smell in a high-end hotel lobby, not on someone running to the grocery store. She wore it to strategy dinners, which she claimed were informal sessions with the upper team. Informal, but somehow dressy enough for heels and silk. I started noticing her schedule getting harder to follow. Her work calendar used to be open. We shared it to keep track of dinners, travel, bills, little things. But one day it just stopped syncing. When I asked her about it, she told me there had been an IT overhaul, and she forgot to re-add me. I believed her. I wish I hadn't. The passwords changed, too. To Spotify, to Netflix, even the family storage drive we used for tax documents and home reno plans. Nothing major on its own, but it was like getting locked out of rooms in a house you helped build. At home, she started guarding her laptop like it was top secret. Before, she'd leave it open while she cooked or stepped out for a run. Now it shut the second I entered the room. Sometimes she'd even close it mid-email, mid-click. I asked her once if something was wrong at work. She said she was just practicing better security hygiene. Her tone made me feel like I was the one overstepping. And then there were the late-night rides. She'd come home in Ubers from places that didn't make sense. Downtown districts where her agency didn't even have clients. She said she was coming from a team dinner, a client mixer, a conference recap. But no one ever posted photos. No one tagged her. I started noting the locations she came back from, just the neighborhoods at first. They started repeating, and almost always on Thursdays. One night I got up at 2 a.m. and checked the ride log on our shared Uber account. She'd switched to a personal profile. The shared one hadn't been used in over a month. Still, I said nothing. I kept watching, quietly. Then came the business trips. Emily used to hate travel. Hated airports, hated hotel pillows. We'd joke that she was allergic to Marriott sheets. But lately, she was always packed. Ready. Eager, even. Her work trips had multiplied overnight. Trainings, launches, summits. Always booked with less than a week's notice. Always overlapping with someone else's schedule. And more often than not, that someone was Thomas. She'd mention him in passing. Thomas and I are running point on this client. Or, Thomas said the last launch in Denver was a mess, so we're planning tighter. But when I asked specifics, what client, what project, what deliverables, her answers got vague. Slippery. Once, while she was away in Miami, I checked their company's website. No event listed. No new project announced. I Googled the hotel she was staying in. It was 5 stars. She had told me it was budget accommodations. I emailed her something casual. Hope you're not stuck in a Holiday Inn, just to see her response. She didn't reply for 2 days. When she got back, she acted like nothing happened. Gave me a hug, unpacked like normal, even handed me a little branded notebook from the agency like a souvenir. That night, I noticed her wedding ring wasn't on the nightstand. That used to be her routine. Take off jewelry, place it on the dish by her side. I hadn't seen the ring there in weeks. When I asked her about it the next morning, she laughed. Said she had gotten used to keeping it on now. Just feels weird to take it off, she said, like it was a good thing. But it wasn't on her finger either. She changed the subject fast. Asked me about my week. Made my favorite breakfast. Played music while we ate. That was the new pattern. When I got too close to the edges, she'd pivot. Distract. Reposition. She was good at it. I'd never noticed how good. The final straw wasn't even dramatic. It was a Tuesday night. I was going over our shared credit card statements for tax season, and something felt off. Not wrong, just too clean. The line items didn't match how she lived. There were dinners that were oddly modest. $11 for client appetizers. $9 coffee tabs at regional stops. Meanwhile, I'd seen her dressed like she was heading to a gala every week. New shoes. A different handbag every month. I couldn't find a single receipt for them. She was either paying cash for high-end items or expensing everything through someone else. I asked her about the reports. She gave a long speech about how her company restructured its per diem system, how reimbursements were filed in bulk, how client dinners now had shared budget pools. I nodded, said I understood, but I couldn't. The Emily I knew, the one I met 5 years ago in a winter coffee shop, who used to light up when I brought her Chinese takeout after long shifts. That version of her would have laughed at the absurdity of shared budget pools. Now she wore curated outfits, smiled with careful eyes, and had a habit of turning off the world whenever I got close. One night, I checked her work trip schedule against a corporate calendar I found on LinkedIn. The dates lined up exactly with Thomas's public posts. When he was in Denver, she was in Denver. When he posted a boomerang of a view from Chicago's W Hotel, I checked her flight receipt. Same day, same arrival time. It wasn't a mistake anymore. It wasn't a miscommunication. And it sure as hell wasn't nothing. I didn't have proof. Not yet. But what I had was worse. The sinking, bone-deep certainty that I was watching someone I loved live a second life. One I wasn't part of. And she was getting better at hiding it every day. I think part of me was still hoping to be wrong. Even after everything, the signs, the slips, the overlapping schedules, I wanted there to be another explanation. Some perfectly logical reason I hadn't considered. Something, anything that would make all of it not what it looked like. But reality doesn't work that way. And sometimes the truth doesn't show up like a thunderstorm. Sometimes it's quiet, methodical, patient, and then it strikes. It happened during one of Emily's client-intensive business trips, this time to Chicago. She told me about it casually over dinner. "It'll only be 3 days," she said, spearing asparagus on her plate. "The usual pitch cycle. Nothing exciting." She smiled, kissed me goodbye the next morning, rolled her suitcase out the door like she'd done it 100 times before. And maybe she had. I didn't expect to catch her. Not then. Not like this. Started with a bank alert, one I'd forgotten I'd set. Years ago, we linked our cards to a travel rewards dashboard that tracked points and bonus categories. I rarely checked it, but that day, a notification popped up on my phone while I was stuck in traffic. New transaction. $327. 80 Parkview Hotel, Chicago, double occupancy booking. First, it didn't register. Then I reread it. Double occupancy. I pulled over, parked on the shoulder with my hazard lights flashing. Opened the app and checked the details. The reservation had been processed that morning. The hotel's name was listed, one of those boutique-style places with rooftop lounges and artisan lobby coffee. Emily had told me her agency was staying at a mid-tier business chain near the airport. This wasn't that. I stared at the screen, adrenaline crawling up my spine. My first instinct was denial. Maybe it was a group room, I thought. Maybe the agency books doubles to save money. Maybe, God help me, maybe they made a mistake. But I didn't believe it. Not anymore. And this time I wasn't going to sit and spiral in silence. I threw a duffel bag into the back seat, filled it with chargers, toiletries, a half-wrinkled dress shirt, and hit the road. No text to Emily. No heads up. Just silence. A 4-hour drive and the engine's hum as my only companion. By the time I reached the hotel, it was close to midnight. The lobby was dimly lit but modern, soft jazz playing overhead. A small group of guests lingered at the bar near the check-in desk. I took a deep breath, adjusted my collar, and walked in. The receptionist looked up. "Welcome to the Parkview. Checking in?" "Actually," I said calmly, "I just need to confirm a reservation. My wife is staying here, Emily Harper. I'm joining her tomorrow, and she wanted me to make sure everything was set up properly. Room type and all that." She typed quickly. "Sure, one moment. Yes, Emily Harper, room 904. 2 guests, Queen Deluxe." 2 guests, I repeated, pretending to sound surprised. "Yes, the reservation is under her name, but it's listed for double occupancy." I nodded, mouth dry. "Thanks." And, "Sorry, do you show if the other guest has checked in?" She blinked. I can't disclose names, but both key cards were activated. So yes, both guests are checked in. My stomach turned. Right? That makes sense. I left the lobby in a fog, stepped outside, leaned against a cold steel railing, and stared out at the traffic on the river bridge. I told myself to walk away, to drive back, to just accept that this was it. But I didn't. I circled to the side parking lot, the one closest to the elevators. Her texts had once mentioned how she always parked near the loading dock when staying at hotels. I don't know why I remembered that, but I did. And there it was. Thomas's car. Same license plate. Same subtle bumper scratch I'd seen at the gala, right above the rear reflector. He wasn't even trying to hide. I pulled out my phone, took a photo, then another, made sure the timestamp was visible in the frame, took a picture of the hotel sign, the parking lot, the car's plate, then I walked back in. I didn't go to the front desk again. Instead, I ordered a drink at the bar, sat near the elevator bank, and waited. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe to catch them coming out together. Maybe to see her glance at him the way she used to glance at me. Maybe to hear her laugh. Instead, I got something worse. The room service attendant arrived around 12:30, pushed a tray into the elevator, humming softly. I leaned over. "Late night delivery?" He smiled. "Couple spa night package." Some kind of anniversary upgrade. Nice, I said, forcing a smile. Busy night. Always, he replied. Room 904 was my last run. I blinked. Sorry, what room? 904, he repeated casually, stepping into the elevator. Ordered champagne and chocolate truffles. People always want sweets after spa time. I stared after him, the doors sliding closed. So that was it. I didn't go up. Didn't need to. The dots were connected. The story was clear. I walked back to my car in the freezing wind, every step heavier than the last. When I got inside, I sat there for 20 minutes, shaking. I'd seen enough. I had the proof. Not just suspicion. Not just a feeling. Evidence. Room registration. Credit card record. Photos. Time logs. The hotel clerk. The spa order. The car. This wasn't emotional closeness or questionable boundaries. This was an affair. Physical. Int asterisk mate. Coordinated. And I hadn't even crossed her mind. She didn't know I knew. Not yet. And for the first time, that gave me power. I didn't cry. Not then. Not in the car. Not on the drive back. I thought I would. But what I felt was something deeper. A severing. A sharp, clean mental split. Something inside me just shut off. The part that wanted to fix things. That hoped she'd come clean. That wondered if I was overthinking. That part was gone now. Replaced by something colder. Quieter. Strategic. The next morning, I forwarded the transaction alert to my private email, along with photos and timestamps. I logged into our shared cloud drive and pulled down a backup of our trip calendar. I searched for emails between her and Thomas. Not to read them, just to see how often his name showed up. It was frequent. Then I logged out of everything and sat in the living room, staring at our wedding photo. Her face, smiling back at me from a day that now felt like fiction. I thought about texting her. About asking how her airport hotel was. About mentioning the room service. About using sarcasm as a shield. But I didn't. I decided I would wait. Not for her to confess, but for the right moment. The exact moment I would start dismantling the lie she had built. After that night in Chicago, something inside me changed. Not all at once. Not with fire or fury. It was subtler than that, like a thermostat being dialed down one notch at a time. Anger didn't burn. It cooled. I wasn't pacing the house or punching walls. I was just still, focused, awake in a way I hadn't been in months. Emily came home 2 days later. She walked through the front door like nothing had happened. Gave me a kiss on the cheek. Set her suitcase down in the hallway. Asked if I wanted Thai or Mexican for dinner, and said she missed me. I nodded. Said I'd had a quiet weekend. She didn't notice that I didn't ask about hers. Over the next few weeks, I did what I never thought I'd do in a marriage. I started preparing to leave it. Quietly, methodically, without tipping my hand. My first move was financial. I rerouted my primary income stream to a secondary account she didn't know about. One I'd opened back when we were saving for our first house. It was still active, never closed, just forgotten. Then I moved the recurring auto deposits, bonuses, side work, reimbursements, anything that didn't look suspicious. I left just enough in the joint account to appear normal. Grocery runs, utility bills, gas. Nothing flashy. Nothing abrupt. She didn't notice. Next came the documents. While she was at work or away on another client trip, I pulled the titles to our cars, printed copies of insurance policies, mortgage terms, health coverage breakdowns. Anything with our names on it, I backed up. I photographed everything. Saved it in 2 places. A secure drive in the cloud and a USB stick hidden inside a pack of AAA batteries in my toolbox. Old habits from college, tech paranoia turned out to be good for something. I checked the deed to the house. I'd forgotten that when we refinanced last year, the title had been transferred to me solely for credit purposes. She had signed off on it. At the time, she joked about how it's not like I'm going anywhere. Now, that detail mattered more than I ever could have predicted. She thought this was her home. Legally, it wasn't. While I gathered paperwork, I also gathered data. Emails, calendar invites, travel receipts. I exported every iCloud backup, every shared folder, every overlapping timestamp I could find. I tracked down airport logins, restaurant confirmations, even Google Maps check-ins she'd forgotten to delete. I didn't hack anything. I didn't need to. She was just careless enough to leave a trail. She trusted me just enough to think I'd never follow it. I tracked the Chicago stay through the hotel's rewards program. She had earned points under her name for a couple's retreat promotional weekend. I called the front desk from a burner number, claimed to be following up on a billing error. The woman on the line confirmed the package. Champagne on arrival. Spa session for 2. Late checkout. Romantic turn-down service. All billed under Emily Harper. I said thank you and hung up. I started looking further back. Months, then years. Slowly a pattern emerged. They had built this thing gradually in layers. First as colleagues, then as co-travelers, then as something else. The trips overlapped far too often. Denver, Seattle, Miami, Chicago twice. Hotels always with 2 guests. Dinner bills always for 2. Networking events with no paper trail. I dug through our insurance portal just to see if there was anything unusual. And there it was. 3 weeks before the Chicago trip, she had added a domestic partner to her medical file. Not a spouse. Partner. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe a system bug. But when I clicked into the details, the profile included a name, a birthday, and address, his, Thomas. She had registered him for emergency contact privileges, legal protections, access to benefits I didn't even know were offered. While she was married to me, I sat back in my chair, the glow of the laptop screen flickering in the dark. The irony was almost funny, almost. For all the lies, Emily had been meticulous, smart, cautious, but she hadn't been thorough. She didn't expect me to look here, to look anywhere. In her mind, I was still the trusting, supportive husband who would ask if she was hungry and tell her to get some rest after a long trip. I let her keep thinking that, and then I started documenting. I compiled everything into a timeline, each entry with a date, a location, a data point. February 9th. Shared Lyft drop-off with Thomas after late client dinner. February 10th. Lyft receipt billed to personal account. Drop location near Thomas's condo. February 15th. Hotel booking in Denver. Same confirmation number as Thomas's corporate rate. March 2nd. Deleted calendar invite for off-site strategy meeting. Found forwarded invite in shared archive. Thomas listed as only other guest. March 6th. Added Thomas as domestic partner in insurance portal. No notifications sent. The list grew. Photos. Screensh *TS. Logs. Voice memos to myself cataloging behavior patterns. I kept backups in triplicate. One on the cloud. One on the USB stick. One printed and sealed in an envelope, tucked into a safe deposit box. I wasn't gathering dirt. I wasn't planning to ruin her life. I was preparing for the moment she tried to lie to me again. Because she would. That much I was sure of now. Emily wasn't the type to confess. She was the type to calculate. I knew her well enough to see what was coming. One night, while she was upstairs showering, I walked into the guest room, her new default for work calls and late-night decompression. I opened the nightstand drawer. Inside, next to a half-read novel and a phone charger, was a spare key fob. I recognized the logo. Thomas's building. I didn't touch it. I didn't take a photo. I just stared at it, for a long time. Later that week, she asked if I wanted to go away for the weekend. Just us, she said. I feel like we haven't reconnected in a while. She looked me in the eye when she said it. That was the moment I knew she wasn't going to stop. Not on her own. Not even when caught. She had a second life now, one with its own logic, its own language, its own future. She was just keeping the first one alive long enough to soften the landing. Or maybe to avoid being the bad guy. Or maybe because some part of her didn't want to admit she had already left. She didn't understand what this had done to me. She thought I'd be passive. She thought I'd keep waiting. But I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't guessing anymore. Now I had a file. A story. A map of her betrayal signed, time-stamped, undeniable. And I was almost ready to use it. There's a moment, right before a storm hits, where the air goes still. That was me, sitting in the lawyer's office, watching a spring breeze stir the trees outside the window, feeling the weight of every decision I was about to make. I wasn't trembling. I wasn't angry. I felt resolved, calm in the way a surgeon must feel before the first incision. I'd already gathered everything I needed. The files, the emails, the logs, the financial documents, every thread that Emily had left dangling while she built a life with Thomas behind my back. Now it was time to put them to use. My attorney, Marla, was direct. No fluff, middle-aged, sharp-eyed, and efficient. She'd been recommended by a colleague at my firm who described her as a velvet hammer. Exactly what I needed. I slid the folder across her desk. She opened it, her brows raising as she flipped through the evidence. Photos, transaction records, corporate overlaps, and a copy of the domestic partner registration. When she looked up, there wasn't pity in her eyes, just clarity. "You've been busy. I've been awake," I said. "Then let's not waste time." We began drafting the initial filings that day. Divorce on grounds of adultery, financial fraud, and willful breach of marital contract. Marla explained that while emotional cheating is hard to prosecute, financial dishonesty and asset misuse are another story, especially when it intersects with corporate compliance. And Emily had made it easy. Too easy. I knew the window was short. Emily was scheduled to leave for Houston in 6 days. A cross-client collaboration trip with, of course, Thomas. It would be the perfect time to strike. So I started the clock. The next move was freezing shared assets. Marla submitted a motion to put a temporary hold on our joint checking account and savings. I left just enough accessible for appearances. Groceries, gas, bills. But anything over $500 triggered a text alert. To me, not her. I also revoked her access to our home insurance portal, investment account, and credit union login. Quietly, methodically, not blocked, just moved. Like pulling the plug from the back of a server, leaving the screen on but disconnected from the system. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and chalked it up to system glitches. Either way, she didn't ask. Next came the shared services, Netflix, Spotify, Google Drive. I changed the passwords, not out of pettiness but to signal a shift. A soft warning that her world was about to change. While Marla handled the legal side, I began coordinating with her company's compliance department. Not as revenge, as consequence. Emily had built her affair into her career. Their trips, dinners, upgrades, and expenses weren't just personal. They were professional infractions. She had nized company resources to fund a private relationship, one that potentially exposed her firm to liability. So I wrote a letter. Not anonymous, not emotional, just factual. It outlined discrepancies between her submitted expense reports and the documented activities she and Thomas had engaged in. I included *TS, calendar overlaps, and at least 3 examples of misreported receipts. Ones I had matched with hotel logs and credit card statements. I attached the photos of Thomas's car in the hotel lot during solo business trips. I showed how their travel timelines mirrored down to the hour. I referenced the internal audit codes her agency used, codes she had listed on reports that didn't match actual client activity, according to the firm's public calendar. I sent the letter via certified mail to the agency's ethics office and followed up with an encrypted email to their compliance director, a contact I'd located through LinkedIn. Marla reviewed every word before I hit send. "Not vindictive," she said. "Just surgical." The same day, I submitted a similar report to Thomas's company, this time through their corporate whistleblower portal. Again, no melodrama, no accusations, just data. A clean packet of names, dates, and financial irregularities tied to his travel logs and partner representations. I didn't know what the fallout would be, but I knew it would start soon. Emily left for Houston on a Thursday morning. She hugged me goodbye like nothing had changed, wore a navy pantsuit, rolled her luggage to the Uber like it was any other trip. 2 hours later, the divorce papers were filed. A courier hand-delivered the service packet to her hotel that evening, signed for at the front desk by an assistant. I timed it for maximum clarity, mid-conference, middle of her trip, no time to spin it, no way to control the narrative. Inside the envelope were the documents. Notice of divorce, asset freeze, revocation of joint financial privileges, and a declaration of legal separation of property. Marla's office had included a polite but firm note. Further correspondence should proceed through counsel. At the same time, I activated the final phase. A notice to her firm's internal HR department alerting them to the ongoing investigation opened by compliance. Less than 24 hours later, the dominoes began to fall. It started with a call to her department from the internal audit team. Then, an email from HR requesting a full export of her travel receipts and third-party payments from the last 12 months. According to a friend of mine, someone in the admin chain who owed me a favor, Thomas was quietly placed on investigatory leave. His building pass was deactivated. Travel access revoked. His upcoming trip calendar was scrubbed. Emily texted me the same night, one line. "What did you do?" I didn't reply. She called twice. I let it ring. Then silence. 2 days later, her LinkedIn profile went dark. By the following Monday, her firm had issued an internal memo announcing a review of expense policy enforcement and partner-client boundaries. The wording was vague, corporate, sterile. But the people who needed to know knew. And the ripple effects didn't stop there. Both firms, hers and his, opened parallel audits. Not just of travel, but of procurement, reporting, and digital correspondence. They began requesting old Slack logs, email chains, booking history, every lunch, every rideshare, every training dinner. A friend forwarded me a thread from a company group chat. Unnamed, of course, but filled with frantic speculation. I heard 2 people from accounts got flagged for double-dipping receipts. Someone said client funds were used for personal travel? Major HR thing brewing. Does this have anything to do with that Houston conference? Half the team just got pulled from the project. I didn't respond, didn't comment, didn't gloat. I just watched the story move without me. It wasn't revenge. It was structure. Systems correcting themselves. That week, I changed the locks on the house. Not out of spite, but because it was mine. Legally, financially, and emotionally. I hired movers to inventory shared items and pack her personal belongings into storage. I left a copy of the list on the kitchen table. Taped to it was a note. Collected on legal instruction. Arrangements for delivery can be made through your attorney. No shouting. No confrontation. No performative anger. Just space. And silence. I changed my number the next day. The last email I ever sent her was one sentence. All further communication should go through Marla. After that, I stopped looking back. Emily returned to changed locks, a legal notice, and a home that no longer welcomed her. Thomas was suspended. His trips canceled. Both faced internal audits, uncovering false reports and personal misuse of funds. Friends went silent. Online whispers faded into isolation. I didn't engage. No drama. No scenes. Just distance, firm, final, and quiet. 6 months later, I sold my stake, moved to coastal Carolina, and built something real, quiet, honest. My connection with Hannah, a city analyst, grew slow and sincere. Then came word. Emily took a plea on financial misconduct. Probation, fines, barred from client work. I felt nothing. No triumph. Just closure. I sleep deeply now. No double lives. No shadows. Just peace.